Well, it's nice to be back. The we are. I heard early on that we are egomaniacs with an inferiority complex, and those are two diametrically opposed things, and it's always black and white. I find it interesting that I can be so self-centered and have such a low opinion of myself. I mean, really, think about that. And the reality is that as we come in here, the reason is because I rely on self for so many things, you know. And I think that I should be able to fix myself. That's the way I was raised. I was raised on a ranch in Colorado, and if it's going to be fixed, it's going to be fixed by me. And if I can't get it fixed, I'm supposed to stay there until I either fix it or die. There is no middle ground there. And the reality is that if you want to have self-esteem, do esteemable things. That's what I was taught in Alcoholics Anonymous. And we're going to talk about the cleanup part of this thing. And I think that you hear a lot in the rooms. I heard a lot. And I can remember telling Don that I'm going to make a living amends there. He said, yeah, well, we're going to start with the direct amends. And there was a period of time when I was spouting my mouth off around Alcoholics Anonymous saying there's no place for living amends in Alcoholics Anonymous. And the truth is I was wrong. And again, thank you for that insight. But I think I want to be clear. What do you do when you make a living amends?
What is a living amends?
Yeah, what is it? It's the 12th step. That's what the living amends is. I practice these principles in all my affairs. And I like to distinguish that when we're getting into this conversation. You know, when I was acting like I was making a living amends to somebody, I was bringing my best behavior. I was actually bringing your best behavior. I was mimicking it at the time. And I was trying to be a good man. I was trying to be a loving person. I was trying to be a servant. That's the 12th step. Having had that spiritual transformation in my life, I get to practice these principles in all my affairs. You know, what's it look like in your living room? Are you the same guy on both sides of your front door? I wasn't. I was not the same guy on both sides of my front door. I had to go through the process that we've talked about up until now, and then I had to sit down and make a list of all the people I've harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. And that process has been ongoing. I can tell you that right now, my 9th step is pretty cleaned up. You know, I've made the approach. I've done the things I'm supposed to do, and I'm pretty cleaned up. But the reality is you'll hear different things around the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous that, you know, we make the list, and then we take that list and we divide it into 3 lists. The people I'm never going to make amends to, the people that I might, and the people that I'm okay with making amends to. It's not my experience, but I've heard it shared. I've heard it shared in a way that was real, and it worked for them. So I'm not opposed to anything like that. If it works for you, rock on, man. All I care about is that we make the amends, because I had to do those things. Not just because I had wronged them. That's why I do it today. If I've wronged you, I want to clean it up. We come in here and we have spent decades not taking responsibility for our own life. not taking responsibility for the damage we cause, not taking responsibility, blaming it on others. That's how we roll into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, because we can't own it. If I own it, you'll know. What I didn't know is you already knew. You know, you've been part of in the damage radius of it all, and that amends process is stunning. You know, I can remember sitting down with my wife and telling her I don't even know where to start. You know, I had no clue. And she had some things. My sponsor had given me some things, you know, and we started the journey. You know, but I sat there with her and I said that I was wrong and I have harmed you in these ways. And the way that I was trained to do it is I say that. You know, I take my 8-step list and I transfer it to index cards. And I put the first thing I put on the index card is their contact information. How do I get a hold of them? Where are they? If I don't know, that's the first piece of business. I got to figure out how to get a hold of them. And then I write down, I was wrong, I harmed you in these ways, and I list the ways. And then when the next thing I put on the index card is I ask them if there's anything that I've left off that you want to tell me. And sometimes they have things they want to tell me. And after I write down that I ask them that question, I write on the index card, shut up and listen. Because I'll forget that part. And I ask them if there's anything else, and then I listen. And then I take those index cards, and I start making the approaches, and I keep the index cards where I do, next to the chair Tim was talking about this morning. And I keep it with whatever piece of literature I'm reading or in my book, and it's a piece of business that is ongoing until those cards are gone. And when I'm done with the card, it gets thrown away. You know, and that whatever they've asked me to do to set the record straight, to clean up the damage that I've done, that becomes what I do, how I am. And I can tell you sometimes it doesn't go perfectly, but the earnestness that I have for it, because I trust the process, is incredible. When I went to make amends to my dad the first time, I don't know about you, but if it was valuable and it wasn't nailed down, I sold it, whether it was mine or his. And I had taken everything. I come from a long line of John Henry Wheelers. My dad is the third. I am the fourth. My son is the fifth. My son's a fifth of Jack. And you know, he had stuff that had been given down through the generations of Jacks with initials on it, cool things, and guns and knives, and just stuff. And I had taken all of it, just pawned it and sold it because I needed money. And I had no respect for anything. I had no respect for legacy. I had no respect for his feelings. I just needed money. And it didn't matter what it was, I took it and I sold it, and I cleaned him out of everything that was worth anything. And when I say that, at some extent, that's he had stuff. But it's like this. He had the same name I did, John Henry Wheeler. And one day I realized that the truck title that I had stumbled across going through his shit didn't have the third or the fourth on it. And I sold his truck. Yeah. How do you make amends for that? And you know, but it was things like that. And I went to my dad and I said, Dad, I'm new in recovery, and we're staying on the dock at the ranch. And I said to him, I said, I got to make amends to you. I said, I stole everything I could steal from you. I don't know how to make that right. It was one of the things we were talking about. And he said to me, he said, Jack, you let me worry about the money. And we talked about some other things, and he told me what I could do to clean some things up, but he wouldn't. I said, I don't know how much money it was. I don't know what I didn't keep track of it. And he said, will you let me worry about that? And for the last 30 years, every now and then something comes across one of my accounts. It's got my dad's signature on it. My wife does all the books. And she'll come to me and say, is this part of the amends? I guess so. I don't know. And for the last 30 years, my dad has put stuff on my accounts. He's done it as recently as 3 months ago. And it just shows up. But somehow, and he's good with that. He's good. I mean, and then at one point, he came to work for my business, and he wrecked my truck. Yeah. It came full circle. And I can remember when he said that, I went back to my sponsor and I said, I'm supposed to pay him back. He said he's going to worry about it. And he said, that's okay, let him worry about it. That's what he asked for, let him do it. And I don't know how much money I paid him back, but it's a joke, in my office now. When a bill comes in with my dad's signature on it, my wife will just come in, and now she just holds it up. I said, I don't know, whatever. But I paid him back, I don't know how much money. It never mattered to me. He made it so that I could be free. And it never touched I never even noticed it, really. That's how God works. We talk about paying the money back. We talk about giving the stuff back. We talk about all the stuff in here. What I was taught is to ask them. Don't walk in with your checkbook out. Walk in with your heart out. Walk in wanting to make it right. And ask them what they want from you. And it'll work out. It says in the book, 9 times out of 10, the unexpected will happen. That's my experience. I don't expect how it's going to go. And it turns out miraculous. If I had to write my dad a check for everything I took from him, I couldn't have done it. I was willing to. I was willing to let him set the terms. Because that's what my sponsor taught me, is to let him tell me what he needed from me. What he wanted was my time. What he wanted was for me to be well. He did want his stuff back, but he took care of that. And it became an ongoing joke between my wife and I, because we just paid the bills. And I never noticed that I paid him back. And in that place of ego, I'm the one that's going to walk in with my checkbook out, thinking I know what I need to do. And I'm encouraging you to let people tell you what they need from you. Because then in that place where we trust God and we walk in, even when we don't have the money, I have guys I sponsor who said, I'm going to wait until I have all the money. I said, no, you're going to go make the direct amends and you'll work out a payment plan if you have to. You do whatever you need to do, but make the approach. And ask them what they need from you. And 9 times out of 10, the unexpected happens. The process that we get to go through here in the amends process feels like I got to give them my money. I got to give them my time. I got to give them, name it. And the truth is I got everything. I got self-esteem. Because I did esteemable things. For the first time ever, I rolled up to people's houses and I took responsibility for my actions. You know what you get when you take responsibility for your actions? Self-esteem and freedom. You are free from it. Relief is a funny thing. Relief's all about me. And we come in here and we put down the drink. We do the 4th step. We go through 5. We do a flyby on 6 and 7. And we don't want to do the amends. I can't tell you how many guys I've seen drink with unfinished amends. You know, I can't, it's stunning. And I think because the process that we get to experience when we go through taking responsibility for our own lives is what has driven us to fear our whole lives. I don't want you to know. They already know. 9 times out of 10, they already know. There's been a couple instances where they didn't know, and I had to break the news to them, then I had screwed them. But the reality is I get to stand up and take responsibility for my life. I get to live in my own shoes for the first time ever, without that fear. And as we go through the process and we clean it up, I can tell you the first time I did step 9, I was terrified of it. Now when something comes up, I want to clean it up. I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to be that guy. And I get to clean it up quickly. You know, recently, I walked into my office and my son said something to me, and he's a partner in the business. He's 35 years old. He's Jack the Fifth. Madly in love with him. And he's a professional engineer, and he thinks about things like an engineer thinks about things. I don't. I walked in the office, and there was something going on between us. And I said, fuck off. I mean, I just had it with his engineer's take on the world. And he was hurt, and he told his father to fuck off. So you got a father telling his son to fuck off, and you got a son telling his father to fuck off. And it hurt, you know. It hurt. And I did what you taught me to do. I went down to the river, and I got quiet on a bench and prayed. And then I called, I don't remember if I called Bob or who I called, but I called one of the guys that I have spiritual consent with. And you know, I knew I'd been an asshole. I don't want to be a father like that. And I called my son, and he didn't take my call the first time, and a couple hours later, he called me back. And I told him I was sorry. I don't want to hurt him like that. I shouldn't treat him like that. And we had a conversation. And the amazing thing is he apologized to me, and we talked a little bit about the amends process. And he's not an alcoholic. By all indications, he's doing okay. And but he's been raised around the rooms. He's gone to meetings and conferences. When he was 12 years old, he's sitting in my truck, and we'd been at my home group, and he pulls out a flyer that he took from the home group, and he hands it to me and says, I want to go to this. And it was Clancy was going to be in town, and he had listened to Clancy in my truck 100,000 times. And he said, yeah, I want to go see Clancy I from up in the sky. And so he's been steeped in the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I shared earlier that, you know, our disease is we annihilate everybody around us. We kill everybody around us, and recovery works the same way. It seeps into all of the cracks. You know, my wife compares alcoholism to CO poisoning. She says that everybody in the house the CO is coming in through the cracks in the doors and the cracks in the windows and the cracks in the house, and it's seeping in, and everybody's getting sick, and nobody knows why. And it's deadly, and that's alcoholism. And recovery is the same way. It just sneaks in the cracks of our lives. And everybody's getting well, and nobody knows why. You know, I worked the steps, and my wife got better. I worked the steps, and my son got better. I worked the steps, and my business life got better. I'm the last to see that Jack changed. But everything got better. And I can have a blow up like that with my son today, and 2 hours later we're having a conversation about how much we love each other and respect each other. And that we can work together and have a rough day like that. And it doesn't, when I went 2 years without talking to my dad. He didn't want to come to my wedding. The only reason he came to my wedding is because my mom made him. And the reality is that's who we are. That humanness is out there. And when you suit up and show up and go out there and clean this shit up, take responsibility for your own actions, we'll all come with you. We know how scary it is. I had a couple amends where my sponsor was with me. I've had a couple amends where Tim's been in the truck. The reality is we got to go do this stuff. And the greatest gift is the minute you take responsibility for your own life, you can live in your own shoes peacefully. That feeling of uselessness is gone. I read the bedevilments yesterday lined up with the promises. That process of going and making amends, the process of doing the inventory, the process of understanding that God's the power. That whole thing is done. There's 31 pages of instructions. 31 pages. And when you read the bedevilments, it's the spiritual malady in action. We can't fix that. But we take these actions, and I go make amends to my father, I make amends to my children, I make amends to the people that I've harmed out there that are just victims, innocent victims. And I own that stuff. And the freedom in the promises come true in my life. I know the word serenity today. I know peace. I get it. It's visceral. It's the good shit. It's what I was always looking for. And I can tell you that I'm the guy that won't go make the amends because I'm too busy. I'm the guy that won't go make amends because I got a long story and an explanation and rationalization of why it's their fault. Doesn't matter what they did to me. If I wronged you, if I harmed you, it's my job to own it. It's my job to take responsibility for it. It's my job to clean it up. And we have a path of consideration here that takes us to a place which is exactly where God wants us to be. Where I'm standing in front of somebody saying, I'm human too. I am that guy. I did that to you. I didn't mean to hurt you. And we get to clean it up. We get to do what they ask us to do. And I can tell you in all of the amends I've done, I haven't found one person ask me to do something I couldn't deliver on. I think God makes that possible. I think it's all about the power of God. And I can tell you that same guy that didn't talk to me for 2 years, he raised me with an iron fist, closed fist, beat the shit out of me. And I had a hard time with coming to terms with that. And my sponsor had said to me at the time, he said, Jack, maybe it's the best he could do. Maybe it's how he was raised. He was raised by a steel worker from New York City on a dairy farm in New York. And I had bought into that. Okay, I can go with that. And it worked, Maybe it's the best he could do. And I made the amends to him, and our relationship healed. And for a lot of years, my dad and I were really, really close for decades. And today I'm his caretaker, and he trusts me. And full circle, last week, maybe 10 days ago, my mom and dad asked me to take over their finances. They went through all their accounts. They made me a signer on all their accounts. They gave me a key to the safe where they have all of their gold stashed. All of their gold. It's not much, but it's their gold. And how do you go from where I came from to there? I can tell you it wouldn't have happened without the amends process. it would not have happened. And they need me to take care of their finances right now. They can't do it. And they trusted me enough we had that conversation where we sat down one day and went through everything, and they told me where everything was. And I don't know how you get here from there. I don't know how you do it. And I say that because I'm stunned by it. And yet when the new guy walks into my kitchen dying of alcoholism, I can tell him exactly how to do it. You know, when he's terrified of that 9th step, man, I'll tell him, I'll go with you. You know, we'll go do it together. That stuff happens here. And it's real. And it is the goods, man. It's what I was looking for in the bottom of the bottle. And I found it here. You know, my kids are partners in my company. And I just equalized the partnership less than 2 months ago. And I can tell you I was terrified because I've had bad partnerships. And I'm good with my kids. They love me and respect me, and I love them and respect them, and it's unconditional, man. And when I say that, what I'm saying is that the only reason I say that is that you understand what I'm talking about. I don't think there's any conditions on real love. And I had a conversation with John. I don't know if it was 6 months ago. I don't remember when it was, but we were somewhere together. And he shared some of his experience with being in business with his kids. And it was a decision I had made out of fear, and I'm the guy that'll tell you to never make a decision out of fear. And we equalized things, and now they're equal partners in the company. And I'm not afraid. I'm touched. And it's right. And the only way a guy like me gets there is to show up here and be vulnerable enough to have a conversation with a guy like John, who will share his experience with me. And showing up and making amends and doing this process where we clean things up and we're all standing on solid ground together. You know, somebody asked me early this morning, does doing this ever get to my ego? And yes, of course it does at times. But I run with a crew of guys. I can tell you this table, it separates you from me more than it separates me from you. It took I'm just here. Just happened to have the microphone this weekend. I'm just here with you. You know, you guys are giving me just as much as I'm giving you. Maybe more sometimes because there's more of you. There's no separation. You know? And that's, in order for there to be no separation, I can't have those secrets between us. I can't have that piece of business that I've got over you. And the amends process is the great equalizer, man. And all of a sudden, I'm standing on solid ground, and I understand who and what I really am, and I can take responsibility for my own life. That happens here, and it's the good stuff.
You done?
Yes.
Bob Alcoholic. I don't know that I've ever seen a serial slipper in Alcoholics Anonymous that has completed 8 and 9. Prima facie evidence that you've done the work is completing 8 and 9. If you don't complete 8 and 9, it's a joke. It is not real. And taking those actions with the intent not to repeat those actions. There's such a difference when you sit down with another person face to face and make an amend. It's so much harder to repeat the behavior that you did. There really is so much better chance that that's not going to happen. The financial amends were always the easiest. I think when I came in Alcoholics Anonymous in the 60s, the lists of amends and the lists of resentments, they were smaller. I mean, it was wife, kids, job, family, money. Some of those guys took 10, 12 years to pay off their, we'd have a party, when they got through with their amends. I mean, it was really like a celebration kind of within the group. Today everybody wants a consolidation loan and pay it off, write in a check, on day one. I mean, it is, we aren't used to the process. And the process, when the book says we'll be amazed before we're halfway through, it's not kidding. When we start that process, you don't even have to complete it. Once you are the guy that is making those amends, there's a shift that has happened. And we'll talk more about that as we go on. The very hardest thing for me, the 3 hardest things for me was my middle son, my wife, and my business partner of 53 years. My business partner is sober 62 years, and I've been sober 58. That's an unusual combination. And we've been partners for 54 or 5 years. And we have fought about everything that you can fight about except money. We've never had a fight about money. We're really interesting. He's an interesting guy, very bright, smarter, one of the most purely intellectual people I've ever been exposed to, and it's been a very contentious relationship in so many ways because I see him as a difficult guy. We've made amends to each other. We've made apologies to each other over a period of time. And we still, whatever mechanism it was, I mean, I walked out of the company 10 years ago because I wasn't willing to be who I was in that relationship. And I couldn't change it. And they still kept me connected, and I'm still an owner, but I walked out. My middle son was the one that was most like me. You'd think that'd be the easiest, and it's the hardest, because I didn't like me. I could never figure out why the hell I was so critical of my son, and it was that I collapsed the distinction, and I saw me and him, and I was a real critic. And he was a little dick. He was a real handful all the way through. The younger one was a real handful too. The older one was not quite. He was more his mother's son. But Peter was spring-loaded, head first, 60 miles an hour, no helmet, and he was out there pretty good. So, as an example, he goes away to college, and we're just pleased as hell to get him out of the house and go to school. And so we gave him a credit card at a $5,000 limit on the credit card. And somehow over the next 2 years, he got it raised to $60,000. And that is one example of a lot of examples. And we have been nose to nose, and it's been ugly at times. I made amends to him 2 or 3, he's on my list. I've talked with Howard about, I've had 4 sponsors, 43 years, number 1, 5 years with Dick Martin, 5 years with Howard Polans, where we sponsored each other, and I've had Tim Highland for the last 5 years. Maybe longer, I don't know. Tough with time. God, I've had wonderful men in my life. And there was nothing I wanted more than to heal the relationship, both with my business partner and with, we love each other. We just have conflict all the time because of how we interact. I tried as deeply as I could try with Peter to straighten it out. There was never a question about whether there was love, but we hurt each other regularly. And you can't hide that you disapprove. I mean, it just, you know, he's one of us. He's sober 35 years. I've got reasons. I guess I thought because I was writing the checks that I had the reason, it was okay for me to be a critic. And I tried everything until the last time. And the last time, I forgave him for everything. Everything. And it's done. I got my son back. And money isn't everything, but it keeps you in touch with your children. And I can still have money transactions with Peter, and it's okay. It was a real forgiveness. I tried getting over it. I tried being nice. I tried everything I knew how to try until I forgave it all. And I felt like I was giving up some leverage or something. I mean, I don't know whether I expected him to have the right conversation with me, and not. God, he's a fine man. I mean, it's not like he couldn't have the conversation he could have me. There is a power in forgiveness. There is a power in forgiveness that is part of, we don't talk enough about it, how powerful it is. When Sandy said, when you're wrapped around the axle, you either own, amend, or you need to forgive. And I know our book says that in different ways, and when I heard Sandy say it, it was like, boom. Because forgiveness got elevated. And I've got my son back. For me, I'm able to be with him as a father and love him. And I stay away. He just got into a new business, and it's been a bunch of goddamn problems that I wish he hadn't had. New businesses often are that way, and he bought a business from us, and it's been very difficult. And I'm watching him, and what I love is I thought he was going to run away. And so he's the family problem. And when he got sober, he went to college. He went to 3 colleges before he got the idea of attending. And then there was a historian guy, AA guy, named Bill Pittman. Bill Pittman, Peter wanted to go to film school, NYU film school. And he goes, Pittman takes him to New York City. And he goes to film school. They just laughed at him. They said, look, this is as hard to get in as Harvard. You know, we don't take transfers from people who have your grades and your experience in college. Go someplace else. Peter moves to New York, across the street from NYU. They won't let him take any classes. So he goes to Columbia and he takes classes. Then they allow him to take a couple of classes at NYU, and he starts being a teacher's assistant at NYU. And every week for 2 years, he went to the admissions school. asking to get in. And finally, he made a film while he was there. Long story short, they allowed him, and he graduated. Then he goes out to Hollywood, and he works for Alan Ladd Jr., and he works for 5 or 6 years, hits the road a lot, wants to reinvent his life, and he takes 200 practice exams for the GMATs, and he gets into Oxford University in England and gets an MBA. He meets an African princess on a cruise up the Nile River, and she kind of fell in love with him, and it was like an Indian tribe in the middle of South Africa. It was. They have the largest uranium deposits in the world, second largest uranium deposit. And when Peter went to Oxford, no one wanted to be in a study group because Peter had never taken a business class. And when Peter got that, he went down to do a consultancy for the Bafokeng Nation in South Africa, and the 5 best students at Oxford went with Peter to do that consultancy. The World Economic made him a young global leader, and Harvard gave him a full ride to the Kennedy School. That little asshole really came through. And his older brother's story is every bit as dramatic. What the program has done is just phenomenal. But amends are, 40 years ago, I got a buddy of mine, a guy I really looked up to, an AA talker, great life, lived in a $2 million house, got in some financial difficulty, and I decided to help him out. And I arranged with my bank for a $75,000 loan, drawing at $15,000 a month. Long story short, and given his history, he was fully capable of, paying that back. I did not tell my wife. You understand why. I mean,
Yep.
as it turns out, the bank didn't give him 5 payments of $15,000, they gave him 10. So now the loan's $150,000. The bank calls me in and said, we forgot to have you sign the guarantee. Because they said, look, we're lending you the money. You can give it to your friend, but you're guaranteeing the loan. And the woman officer at the bank did not have me sign the note. And I signed the note. That's what you've done with me. I knew beyond a question of the doubt. I mean, there was no question about what I should have done. But there would have been different times in my life when that would have let me off the hook. That would have been the easier, softer way, When I went broke, we were negotiating with 5 banks, $30 million of loans in different entities. When the real estate and banking thing got in trouble, they just walked into banks and said, get rid of your real estate. So, they just called all your loans, period. There was no way we could have. And long story short, we paid them off 95 cents on the dollar. They gave us some discounts on some loans and worked out. And I promised this one bank that I was close to that if I ever got back on my feet, I'd make them whole. 7 years later, we sell a building. And I pay off whatever debts I had. And I've got $250,000 left over. And I get this thought that I had that conversation with the bank. But the bank's been sold twice. So I go to the president of the bank, and I meet with them. And I said, a long time ago, I told you that if I ever got whole, I said I was going to give this money to a treatment center that I'm on the board of. But I said, coming to you first, to offer it to you. He told me to give it to the treatment center. It is, God's in charge of the money. Now, those are somewhat dramatic stories. I make a lot of money and the numbers are fairly big. But the universe conspires. Once you start to sign up to be in the game, to be the guy, to use once your integrity is restored. We were lying to everybody, like they didn't know. You know? I mean, God, you're standing there with your dick out, lying to someone, hoping they didn't notice, But when your integrity was restored, they noticed. They noticed. And I was able to do business with those banks again over a period of time. I had got in trouble in 2008, and they gave us 3 years, and we paid everybody off. Integrity, it's a really attractive thing. It was very hard for me when I couldn't pay money back at the time, because I've always done what I, tried to do what I did. 8 and 9 are the rocket booster of your program. They are the prima facie evidence that you have completed, that you are completing the work. It's never done. But I'll tell you, if you're wondering why your life may not be as on the track that you'd like it on, if you're wondering why your business life is not working, if you're wondering why your finances especially may not be what you'd like them to be, I find in so many cases it's 8 and 9. And it is, and 8 and 9, relationship-wise. I mean, I was such a poor husband. I love my wife, but I was such a poor husband in the first 8 years of our marriage. I'm still a handful. I'm rambunctious. I always thought it felt like I was holding on to 4 horses, holding them back. And now I found out they're sheep. I don't know. But the power in 8 and 9 is unbelievable. It is the total restoration of your integrity, and it is a completion. It's an opening. It's a freedom. It's that opens you up to who you really are, what kind of a man you are. I mean, there is a dignity in that. I have watched guys, who didn't make much money, make those appointments and make those agreements and go over a period of time. It is as classy as anything I've seen anywhere. And especially in the relationships. I so treasure my relationship with my sons and my wife. I so treasure my parents were just wonderful people. And I likewise my dad was pretty rough with me. That's just the way it was in those days. I mean, I'm not trying to say it's good or bad, what you're supposed to, just the way it was. And he was maybe the finest man I've ever known. Pretty good deal, huh? And when they died, we were clean. There was no unfinished business. I have no unfinished. I'm in business with my oldest son. It's clean. There's nothing. We've just got into kind of a disagreement. All it was a disagreement. It was, it didn't have all the heat with it that it would have had at some other point in time about whose power. I mean, he runs the company. But there was no heat in it. I'm no longer throwing a hand grenade in my life. I don't have any unfinished business. Can you imagine living life with no unfinished business? I mean, there's things that I'm in the process of and things that I want to have happen and things that I have goals for. But mostly I'm just in front of what's next. And it is, you men gave me a path to follow. I wouldn't have followed that. I wouldn't have known how to follow that path. I could have been the most active Catholic in the world, and I never would have found the amends. I never would have found the inventory. I never would have found a sponsor. I never would have found the mentors. I never would have gone to the conferences. I wouldn't have heard the talks and the stories that the collective consciousness of AA wrapped around me and carried me. And in that process, my life healed. I mean, beyond what I ever would have expected. Thank you.